Marcus is sitting in the break room at 12:17 on a Wednesday, eating a sandwich he made at home. Turkey, mustard, the same sandwich he's made every Wednesday for the last 3 years, because it costs him $1.40, and the wrap place downstairs costs $14. His co-workers think Marcus is a little boring. He drives a 2016 Honda Civic with 94,000 miles on it. He doesn't talk about vacations at the Monday morning meeting. He didn't upgrade his apartment when he got his raise 2 years ago. He still has the same IKEA couch he bought in 2019. What his co-workers don't know is that Marcus has $287,000 invested at 34 years old. Not in a trust fund, not from an inheritance, not from crypto, from the sandwich. From doing 13 very specific things that most people around him have never even thought about. Things that don't look like wealth building from the outside. Things that look, honestly, a little boring. This video is about those 13 things, and there is a very good chance you are already doing some of them without knowing that they are making you a millionaire. My name is Sachs, and I spend way too much time studying the gap between people who build serious wealth and people who don't, specifically the part nobody talks about. Because here's what I've noticed. Most wealth-building content focuses on what you need to start doing, the habits you need to add, the investments you need to make, the routines you need to build. But nobody focuses on what you might already be doing, the quiet behaviours that are already working in your favor, the signs that you're further along than you think. So today, we're flipping the script completely. If you've ever felt like you're behind, like everyone else has figured something out that you haven't, like you're doing everything right but have nothing flashy to show for it, stay with me. Because this video might completely change how you see your own financial situation. Hit the like button if you want more content like this, and let's get into all 13 signs. Not inconvenient, not annoying, genuinely uncomfortable. There's a specific type of person who, when they think about carrying a balance on a credit card, feels something close to physical discomfort. Like an itch they can't ignore until it's gone. Like leaving the house knowing they left the stove on. Most people don't feel this way. Most people have made peace with debt as a permanent feature of their financial life. The average American carries $6,501 in credit card debt, according to Experian's 2025 State of Credit Report. Not because they're irresponsible, because somewhere along the way, the discomfort went away. The balance became background noise. But if debt still bothers you, if you feel it sitting there, even when you can afford the minimum payment, that discomfort is not a personality quirk. It is a wealth-building asset. The Ramsey Solutions national study of 10,000 millionaires found that 73% of them had never carried a credit card balance in their adult lives. Not because they were always rich, because the discomfort of debt was stronger than the comfort of whatever the debt would have bought. Here's what this actually means practically. Every month you don't carry a balance is a month where 21.5% interest is not working against you. Over a lifetime, that's not a small thing. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars that stayed in your column instead of the bank's. If debt makes you uncomfortable, you're not uptight, you're on track. Not because you have a lot of money, because the saving happens first and spending happens with whatever is left. This is the single biggest behavioral difference between people who build wealth and people who intend to build wealth. The intention-based saver thinks, I'll save whatever is left at the end of the month. And at the end of the month, there is never anything left. Because spending expands perfectly to fill whatever income is available. Every time, without exception. The automatic saver never sees the money. It moves on payday, before the coffee, before the groceries, before the weekend. It is already gone into an investment account before the brain even registers it as available to spend. Vanguard's 2025 How America Saves report found that participants who used automatic contribution increases saved 40% more over a 10-year period than people who managed contributions manually. Not because they earned more, because the decision was made once and then removed from daily willpower. Here's what makes this a millionaire sign specifically. You don't save automatically because saving feels great. You save automatically because you set it up once and you protect it. You've treated your savings rate like a bill, non-negotiable, non-optional. The electric company doesn't ask if this month was hard. Neither does your investment account. If your savings move before you can spend them, you are not disciplined. You are smart. There's a difference. Not approximately, not roughly, exactly. You know the balance in every account. You know what you owe and what you own. You could sit down right now and calculate your net worth within $500 without opening a single app. Most people have no idea what their net worth is. They have a vague feeling, a sense of whether things are going okay or not okay. But the actual number, assets minus liabilities, is something they've never written down and actively avoid thinking about directly. The Federal Reserve's 2025 survey of consumer finances found that households who tracked net worth monthly had significantly higher wealth accumulation over 10-year periods than households who tracked sporadically or not at all. The act of knowing the number changes the behavior around growing it. Think about it this way. You cannot optimize something you are not measuring. A business that doesn't track its balance sheet is not running a business. It's hoping, and hope is not a financial strategy. Knowing your net worth is not obsessive. It is not anxiety. It is the most basic form of financial awareness. And the fact that most people around you don't have it means that you, by simply knowing your number, are already operating at a level above the majority. Marcus knows his number. He checks it on the first of every month. He's been doing it for 6 years, and watching it grow, even slowly, even in the months when it barely moves, is what keeps him making the sandwich instead of buying the wrap. This one is rarer than it sounds. The natural human response to a raise is to improve something. Nicer apartment, better car, more expensive restaurants, a streaming service you didn't have before, a gym membership that's a step up from the last one. And individually, every one of those upgrades is completely reasonable. The problem is that collectively, they consume every dollar of every raise before it has a chance to compound. This is lifestyle creep, and it is the single most effective wealth destroyer for people who earn good money. Goldman Sachs's 2025 retirement survey found that among households earning $250,000 to $500,000 per year, 43% reported living paycheck to paycheck. Nearly half of people making $250,000 a year have almost nothing left at the end of the month. The upgrade happened, and then the upgrade happened again and again, until the lifestyle expanded to perfectly match the income, and there was nothing left to invest. But here's the sign of a future millionaire. When you got your last raise, you noticed it for a second. Maybe you went out to dinner, and then you increased your automatic investment contribution by a meaningful percentage and kept living the same life. Not because you're punishing yourself, not because you don't deserve nice things, because you understand intuitively that the gap between what you earn and what you spend is the only variable that actually determines whether you build wealth. And you protect that gap like it's the most valuable thing you own, because it is. And you think that's a problem. It isn't. If you are invested in broad index funds, contributing consistently, rebalancing occasionally, and not doing anything exciting, you are doing it right. And the evidence for this is overwhelming. Spiva's 2025 scorecard found that over a 20-year period, 95% of actively managed large-cap funds underperformed their benchmark index. Not some of the time, 95% of the time. The exciting strategy, the one with the active manager, the stock picks, the tactical shifts, lost to the boring one almost every time. The people making money from exciting investment strategies are mostly the people selling them. Here's the specific sign to watch for. When someone at a party talks about a stock tip or a new investment opportunity, and you feel genuinely uninterested. Not skeptical, not afraid, just uninterested because you already have a system. That is a wealth-building signal. That is the sound of someone who has graduated from hoping and started compounding. Warren Buffett's famous advice for the average investor has never changed. Low-cost index funds held for decades. Buffett himself has said he's instructed the trustee of his estate to put 90% into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund for his wife after he's gone. The most celebrated investor in history recommends the boring strategy for everyone he loves. Boring is not a failure of ambition. Boring is how the math works. Most financial decisions people make are evaluated on a monthly timeline. Can I afford this payment? What does this do to my budget this month? How does this feel right now? The millionaire in training evaluates on a different timeline entirely. Not, what does this cost per month? What does this cost me over 20 years if I'd invested it instead? Not, is this affordable? Is this worth the opportunity cost? This is called future self-orientation, the psychological ability to make present decisions on behalf of a future version of yourself who you actually care about. And research from Stanford's psychology department shows it is one of the strongest predictors of long-term financial success. Here's what this looks like in practice. When you're standing in a car dealership and the salesman is explaining the monthly payment, and instead of calculating whether you can afford the payment, you're calculating what that same payment invested over 10 years would become, that is a future-oriented brain at work. When you pass on the expensive vacation, not because you can't afford it, but because you've done the math on what that money becomes in 15 years, and you've decided the future version of you matters more than the present experience. That is a specific kind of financial thinking that most people never develop. It is not deprivation. It is not joylessness. It is the long game played deliberately. And the people who play it almost always win. This sounds basic. It is not basic. It is genuinely rare. Bankrate's 2025 Annual Emergency Savings Report found that 57% of Americans could not cover a $1,000 emergency expense from savings alone. Not a $10,000 emergency, a $1,000 emergency. More than half the country is one car repair away from credit card debt. But there's a second part of this sign that's more specific and more important. Not just having an emergency fund, not touching it. Because the emergency fund is only worth something if it's actually there when the real emergency arrives. And the real emergency is not the emergency that people use it for. The real emergency is the job loss, the medical event, the genuine crisis that arrives once a decade. The sign of someone on track to build serious wealth is the emergency fund that has been sitting in a high-yield savings account for years, slowly earning interest, untouched, while smaller emergencies were handled by adjusting the budget, finding creative solutions, or absorbing the cost from cash flow. The emergency fund is not a savings account you raid when something uncomfortable happens. It is a financial moat that you protect because you understand exactly what happens to wealth-building momentum when you have to start over from zero. If your emergency fund is boring and untouched and growing slightly every month, that is one of the most powerful wealth-building behaviours a person can have. This is the sign that most surprises people, because future millionaires are not universally frugal. They are selectively frugal. They have identified the specific things in their life that genuinely matter to them. The experiences, the relationships, the comforts that actually improve their quality of life, and they spend on those things without guilt. And they have identified the things that don't matter, the status purchases, the subscriptions they forgot they had, the upgrades that impress other people but don't actually make them happier. And they spend almost nothing on those things. The research on this is clear. A 2024 study, published in the Journal of Consumer Psychology, found that spending on experiences aligned with personal values generated significantly higher life satisfaction than spending on material goods purchased for social signaling. The future millionaire buys the expensive coffee equipment because they genuinely love their morning coffee, and it brings them real daily pleasure. And they drive a 10-year-old car because a newer car genuinely doesn't matter to them. The wealth destroyer buys the newest car because it signals something to the neighbors, and then cuts the coffee to try to save money. Intentional spending is not the same as cheap spending. It is knowing the difference between what you want and what you want people to think you want, and acting accordingly. Not because you're greedy, because you understand something most people around you don't. A single income stream is not just financially limiting, it is financially fragile. One decision by one employer can eliminate 100% of your income in a single conversation. And if your lifestyle depends on that income, your entire financial life hangs on one relationship you don't fully control. The IRS statistics of income data consistently shows that the majority of millionaires have more than one source of income. Not 5, not 10, more than one. A second stream, however small, changes the entire risk profile of a financial life. Here's the sign specifically. You are either
not passively, not accidentally, intentionally. You seek out financial information the way other people seek out entertainment. Not because money is the most interesting thing in your life, because you understand that financial knowledge compounds exactly like financial capital does. Every concept you understand makes the next concept easier. Every strategy you learn about opens a door to a strategy you didn't know existed. The financial education gap between someone who has been consuming quality financial content for 5 years versus someone who hasn't is enormous, and it shows up directly in their net worth. Thomas Corley spent 5 years studying the daily habits of 177 millionaires for his book, Rich Habits. One of his most consistent findings was that 88% of millionaires read at least 30 minutes per day, focused on self-improvement, education, or career development, compared to 2% of people who struggled financially. This is not correlation by accident. Knowledge changes decisions. Better decisions change outcomes. Compounded over years, the person who knew more almost always ends up with more. And here's the specific sign. You are watching this video, not because someone sent it to you and you're killing time, but because you sought out information about wealth building on purpose. Because you do that regularly. Because it interests you. That interest is not accidental. It is one of the most reliable indicators of where you're headed. This one eliminates most people immediately. The get-rich-quick mindset is not just a financial strategy, it is a fundamental misunderstanding of how wealth actually works. And it is extraordinarily common. Cryptocurrency schemes, options trading, day trading, multi-level marketing. The next big thing that everyone is talking about is at the exact moment you should be the most skeptical. And the tragedy is that the get-rich-quick mindset is almost always born from genuine ambition, from a real desire to improve your situation, from frustration with how slow the real process feels. But here's what the data actually shows. A 2024 study from the University of California tracked 2,000 retail investors over a 5-year period and found that the top-performing group, measured purely by returns, traded the least. The bottom-performing group traded the most, dramatically more. And the worst performers were the ones actively searching for the fastest possible returns. The future millionaire is not trying to get rich quick, not because they lack ambition, because they understand that time is the ingredient that makes ordinary returns extraordinary. That $500 invested monthly for 35 years at 8% becomes $1.1 million. Not from genius, from patience. If you've looked at a get-rich-quick opportunity recently and felt more skeptical than excited, that skepticism is a wealth-building asset worth more than you know. Not perfect, improving. You know more about your finances today than you did 2 years ago. You make better decisions than you did 5 years ago. You feel less anxious about money than you did a decade ago. Not because things are necessarily easier, but because you understand them better. The National Financial Educators Council's 2025 research found that financial literacy improvement,
measured over 5-year periods, was one of the strongest predictors of net worth growth, independent of income level. The people who got better at understanding money got better at having it. Here's the specific sign. You can remember a financial decision you made 3 years ago that you would not make today. Not because you're harder on yourself, because you've learned something since then that changed how you see it. That learning, that slow, steady accumulation of financial wisdom, is not glamorous. It doesn't make for a good social media post. But it is the invisible process behind every millionaire who didn't inherit it. Your relationship with money is a relationship. It gets better with attention, intention, and time. And the fact that yours is improving, even slowly, even imperfectly, is one of the most powerful signs that you're on the right track. Most financial content is about offense. Earn more, invest more, grow more. But the millionaires who keep their money understand something that the ones who lose it never quite grasped. Building wealth and protecting wealth are two completely different games, and you have to play both simultaneously. Playing defense means you have adequate insurance, health, life, disability, and umbrella liability. It means you have estate documents, a will, beneficiary designations, updated and accurate. It means you are not taking concentrated risks you don't fully understand. It means you have a plan for what happens if the income stops. Fidelity's 2025 Millionaire Outlook. A study found that the overwhelming majority of self-made millionaires cited protection of existing assets as a primary financial priority, ranking it alongside or above
growth in importance, because here's the brutal math of losing money. A 50% loss requires a 100% gain to break even. A portfolio that drops from $500,000 to $250,000 needs to double just to get back to where it started. Every major setback doesn't just cost you the money you lost. It costs you the years of compounding that money would have generated. The future millionaire is building aggressively and protecting carefully at the same time. Not because they're afraid, because they understand that the wealth they're building is worth protecting, that the years of discipline and patience that created it deserve to be defended. If you think about both growing your money and not losing it, if you care about defense as much as offense, you are thinking like someone who keeps what they build. With Marcus finishes his sandwich at 12:43, he puts the container back in his bag, checks his investment account for exactly 40 seconds, the way he does every Wednesday, and goes back upstairs to his desk. His co-workers are talking about a new restaurant that opened downtown. Someone got a new car over the weekend. Someone else is planning a trip to Europe that they'll probably put on a credit card. Marcus nods and smiles and joins the conversation. He is not better than them. He is not judging them. He genuinely likes these people. He just knows something they don't know yet. Not that he's on his way to $1 million. He's known that for years. What he knows, what he's known since the first sandwich, since the first automatic contribution, since the first time he checked his net worth and actually felt proud of a number that nobody else would look twice at, is that the boring version of wealthy is still wealthy, that the quiet path still gets there, that the sandwich is the strategy. You don't need to be flashy to be on track. You don't need to announce it. You don't need anyone at the lunch table to know. You just need to know. And if you recognized yourself in these 13 signs, even in 3 or 4 of them, even imperfectly, you already do. Subscribe if this gave you a different way to see where you're headed. I'll see you in the next one.